Guys, it's Alyssa back for another virtual aquarium lesson. Today's topic is going to be poisonous versus venomous creatures. We actually have a number of both poisonous and venomous animals here in our aquarium, and there really is a distinct difference between the two. The main difference between poison and venom is how it's delivered or enters the body. So poison, for example, causes damage by maybe coming into contact with the skin, even if you inhale it, or if maybe you ingest it as well. Venom, on the other hand, really does need to make its way into your bloodstream to do severe damage. So a venomous animal is going to have some sort of method of usually creating a wound and injecting that venom. So think of things like maybe fangs or even spines, which brings me to my first example of a venomous animal, and that is our yellow-spotted stingray. We actually have 3 of them in here, believe it or not. Here's one. We have 1 female and 2 males, and these guys are common all along our coast here in Florida, and this right here is what makes them venomous. We call this their barb, and this is actually from a much larger stingray. Our stingrays are a bit smaller species, so their barbs are going to be a bit smaller, but they look pretty much exactly the same. So this barb, this kind of flat portion here, is actually embedded in the stingray's tail. And stingrays are a little bit different than some other venomous animals. They don't necessarily have that true venom gland at the end of this barb. Instead, for a lack of a better way of trying to describe it, they have a very thin layer of almost specialized skin covering this barb. It's called their sheath. And that skin has special cells in it that can secrete venom. So when a stingray gets scared or threatened maybe by a predator, it's going to puncture that predator with this barb, and then those specialized cells are going to secrete the venom into that wound. And then because these barbs have these really kind of sharp serrated edges along both sides of it, it really does not want to come out of whatever it's been stuck into. So in most cases, the stingray is actually going to leave this barb behind and swim away to hopefully safety. Thankfully, they can regrow these barbs, which is good. It's pretty much their only form of self-defense. Stingrays, I think for the most part, are very gentle creatures. I think they'd much rather just hide and camouflage in the sand, which is why their venom and their barbs really only truly are used for self-defense. They never use it for like hunting, anything like that. So like we said, only when it's going to be maybe attacked by a predator, or if a person steps on it, which does happen quite frequently, especially here in Florida, because we do have quite a few stingrays here in Florida, different species, and they do like to be in a lot of the same areas that we like to be in. They like kind of that soft, sandy substrate, and they can be in the shallow waters as well. So that's why I always tell people, if you're in kind of that shallow water setting, something you can do if you don't want to be stung by a stingray is very simple. It's called the stingray shuffle. You literally just take your feet and you shuffle them through the sand. And stingrays are very sensitive animals. They actually have a couple extra senses that we as humans do not. So they are going to sense that movement and swim away, because like a lot of animals, they really are more scared of us than we are of them. And if unfortunately you do get stung by a stingray, it's not going to be a fun day. You're probably going to be okay, probably going to want to go to the hospital, get it checked out. But something you can do right away to hopefully give you a little bit of relief is put some hot water on the wound, maybe soak that wound in hot water. And that's because stingray venom is heat sensitive. So hopefully the heat from that water is going to break down the proteins in that toxin and give you a little bit of relief. Again, it's not going to be a fun day, but thankfully stingray venom is very, very rarely deadly. It's only in exceptional cases. So like with Steve Irwin, unfortunately, Steve Irwin was stung by a very large ray and essentially had a very large barb. And unfortunately, it punctured his thoracic wall, supposedly a lung, and unfortunately his heart. And they really think that it was the actual wound to the heart rather than the stingray venom that caused his unfortunate death. Also, if you don't know who Steve Irwin is, I recommend looking it up. He's awesome. But yeah, thankfully it's really rarely deadly. Actually, I used to do stingray research back in college, and I had a friend that was out in the field and she got stung what she thinks was by a yellow spotted stingray in the leg. And thankfully they were by a hot water source. They got some hot water on that wound and she actually didn't even have to go to the hospital. So thankful for that. It really just depends on the circumstances, the location of the wound, and even the type of stingray. But now we'll move on and talk about another venomous animal, which is over here. That is our lionfish. Lionfish are beautiful creatures, also incredibly invasive. If you missed our video last week with our director, she did a great video on invasive videos. I definitely recommend checking it out. But these guys, part of what makes them beautiful are these really kind of long, flowy spines that you see on them. That's also what makes them quite venomous. Lionfish have 18 venomous spines. 13 of them are located dorsally, so along the top portion of them here. And these guys are a bit different than the stingray, but they are kind of more similar to most venomous animals. And at the end of each of those spines, they have essentially a venom gland, like a little sac of venom. So again, when these guys feel scared or threatened, they're going to puncture what is ever scaring them with those spines, and that little gland is going to be injected. And that venom is going to enter your body. And what's kind of interesting too is with these guys, so it depends on how many spines you actually get, just how much venom you're going to get injected into you. So if you only get one spine, you're only going to get one of those venom glands. If you get like 3 or 4 spines, you're going to get a lot more venom. Unfortunately, like the stingray, there is no known anti-venom for lionfish stings. The same theory applies, however, where if you put some hot water on it, hopefully it's going to start to break down the proteins in that toxin. Again, not going to be a fun day, but also, again, very, very rarely deadly. Also, please disregard the fact that this says poisonous. They are in fact venomous, because like we talked about, they have those spines to inject the venom into the bloodstream. So which is why in our last video as well, we talked about how you can eat a lionfish, because if you take off the spines, you can essentially eat it because it's not going to enter in your bloodstream. Something that is poisonous though is right next door. We have our pufferfish, we have a balloonfish, and a birdfish over here that's swimming around. These guys sometimes get confused for being poisonous, confused for being venomous, because a lot of them do have those spines that are on them that are especially evident when they're puffed up, but those spines do not contain any kind of venom. If you get poked by it, it's not going to feel very good, but there's no venom going to be injected. What makes a pufferfish poisonous is actually their internal organs. Their internal organs contain a substance called tetrodotoxin. It is an incredibly potent poison. I think it's like 1,000 times more deadly than cyanide. And on average, one pufferfish has enough of that tetrodotoxin to kill 30 men. So don't mess with a pufferfish. Having said that though, interestingly enough, pufferfish is actually a delicacy in some parts of the world. I'm not sure why. You have to have some incredible training, be a very expertise person in order to prepare it and serve it to people. But even at that, there still are deaths and even fatalities and injuries from eating pufferfish if it's prepared incorrectly. It's called fugu. So definitely not on my list to try. I'm also deathly allergic to fish, so it really wouldn't be a good day for me. But either way, given those statistics, I would not want to try. Also, they are one of my favorite animals. They're really smart. A lot of them learn to recognize their caretaker. Actually, our big pufferfish in that front tank there, we target feed him every day. And he even knows pretty much the time we feed him. And if we're a little bit late, he does get quite cranky. But speaking of favorite animals, actually, a very big fan favorite is dory. We have a lot of dories all around here in our aquarium. And interestingly enough, we've never actually purchased a dory, which could be another story for another day. But something interesting about dory is she is actually venomous. She belongs to a larger classification of fish called surgeonfish. And they get that name because they have really sharp scalpel-like spines. And some of those spines, like on dory, actually contain venom. So while dory can be quite forgetful and a bit frantic, she does have a pretty powerful punch and some pretty good self-defense. But I hope you guys all learned a little bit of something about poison and venom, and maybe are able to tell the difference between the two now. If you guys have any questions, please let us know. But thank you guys soon. We hope to see you soon. Bye.